So I've been doing these Star Wars novels for a while, and I have several to write about, but one name I'd often heard and knew little about was Darth Bane. And while Darth Bane is a popular character to EU fans and people fan casting Keanu Reeves as every Star Wars EU character imaginable besides a brief appearance in Star Wars The Clone Wars, he hasn't been seen much outside of the Star Wars comics and novels from the pre-canon days. Though, while starting this project, I heard this was a series to go through, so I took that advice and listened to the Darth Bane trilogy. The first of which is Darth Bane, Path of Destruction, which takes place in 1006 BBY, kind of at the tail end of the era of the Old Republic, and at least for the Sith, showing the rebirth that would eventually come in the form of the Rule of Two, something Star Wars always talks about while always trying to simultaneously dance around the inherent problem being that Star Wars has naturally always wanted to make stories about its most popular faction, the Jedi, but no one knows what the hell they do all day if they're not fighting Inquisitors, Dark Jedi, Grey Jedi, Darksaber wielding people, pseudo-Sith, clone Sith, or mind-controlled people being Sith, outcast Sith, Sith cultists, or more. In theory, though, the Darth Bane trilogy seeks to show the consolidation of the Sith through a cunning but flawed Sith warrior in Darth Bane, who sends events into motion that are more or less perfulous until the rise of Darth Plagueis, and moreover, the rise of Sidious. Darth Plagueis is another novel I read, which I will eventually cover. However, this is a trilogy of novels explaining why the Sith armies of the Old Republic get toppled and replaced with the Rule of Two, kind of connecting the Old Republic and more modern stories we would see in the prequels. The Darth Bane trilogy consists of 3 novels, Path of Destruction from 2006, which we're talking about today, Rule of Two from 2007, which we'll cover eventually, and Dynasty of Evil from 2009, with the whole trilogy being written and developed by Drew Karpyshyn, an architect behind the Old Republic era of Star Wars, working on the original game, the MMO, the Darth Revan book, and Annihilation, a novel set in the Old Republic era as well. Basically, he's a Star Wars lore guy looking back at a time long before the Phantom Menace and the core eras Star Wars focuses on. With that said, his lore has often become fan-favorite lore, and while only small bits are still canon, like Darth Bane, who was seemingly largely decanonized, fans have been begging to see more from the era, rather than the weird stuff from the High Republic era, Disney's pseudo-replacement for the Old Republic subseries in Star Wars canon. Path of Destruction is a canon story taking place across 1006 to 1000 BBY, and follows a man named Dessel, later known as Darth Bane, a miner on the planet Apatos. Dessel has only been on this planet due to the fact that his father was a miner under a company that more or less used the pair as indentured servants, and while Dessel hated his father following the man's death, Dessel inherited his debt, making escape from the planet next to impossible. However, in a chance encounter following a sabacc game against a series of Republic soldiers, Dessel accidentally kills one of the soldiers in self-defense, causing him to need to leave the planet he hated so much. The only way to do that would be to join the Sith army, as he could no longer be seen in Republic space as a wanted man, with other officers pinning him as the killer and an uphill battle to prove that he did it in self-defense. Dessel, however, is Force-sensitive, and that allows him to excel in his unit known as the Gloomwalkers with the Sith, at one point even disobeying his incompetent commanding officer to lead his crew to safety. However, this didn't stand well with that commanding officer, who turns him over to the Sith Lords for punishment, though hearing of the feats he had done in the many battles, the Sith in question, Lord Kopek, decided to take mercy on him and enrolls him in the Sith Academy on the planet Korriban. Dessel, as in the tradition of the Sith, becomes Bane, a student who, while behind on his training and older than most, excels in his training and moves up the ranks fairly quickly, becoming a top prospect in the school, killing Faharg, a student that was considered one of the strongest, with relative ease, though the killing could have potentially landed Bane in hot water, as it is forbidden for a Sith prospect to kill another Sith prospect. However, around this time a new challenger arrived, one that was seen as the definitive best Sith, Sirach, while simultaneously the guilt of killing Faharg started weighing on Bane, causing his powers to dull. Cyrock demolishes Bane with ease on their first fight, with Bane's power losing effectiveness, though he survives due to Cyrock wanting to save him around as a reminder. Bane is chastised and loses his standing, though a new student, Githany, a former Jedi who left General Hoth's Army of the Light, an alliance of Jedi warriors who were fighting the Sith armies on Ruusan. Githany proposes an alliance with Bane, hoping to become the strongest Sith at the Academy by learning what a now pathetic Bane knows and why he was able to excel so quickly, betraying him to Cyrock in a planned rematch, though while training with Githany, Bane has also enlisted the Blade Master at the Academy, Qasim, to train him in blade combat. Bane starts reconnecting with anger, which gives him the power which will eventually make him much stronger. He easily beats Cyrock in a rematch, and though he expected the Sith Masters to be happy, they told him he was to stop studying the ancient Sith since many of their ways contradicted the current ideas of the Sith. Angered by this, Bane leaves the temple in search of Sith knowledge, though Bane found nothing and returns. Though, sensing him becoming more of a threat, Githany plans to best Bane by having him be ambushed by her, Cyrock, and two of his Sith companions, but Bane kills them all with exception of Githany, who regains his trust amid a romance the pair started forming. Shao Kahn, the pseudo-leader of the Brotherhood of Darkness, knights all of the Sith Academy members, making them all Dark Lords of the Sith, calling them to battle against General Hoth on Ruusan, as Hoth has started to make great gains in the war against them. But Bane takes off on a side quest before meeting with the group. He heads to Lihan, where he heard there may still be Sith artifacts that haven't been tampered with, eventually finding a holocron of the long-dead Sith Lord, Darth Revan. Bane at this point adopts the ways of the ancient Sith and creates the Rule of Two, thinking that the power of the Sith is spread too thin across thousands of Sith, and the philosophies will eventually become too close to decipher between the two factions, and the only resolution to the Sith's goal of wiping out the Jedi and ruling the galaxy would only come through a consolidation of power. However, Lord Khan sends Qasim after Bane in an attempt to bring him into the army, or dispatch of him, though Qasim is killed by Bane, who had clearly overtaken his master's power with both the blade and the Force. He then sends Lord Khan a message on how to use the dangerous ancient Sith technique, the Thought Bomb, figuring he would use it and all of his Sith would be wiped out, along with a number of Jedi. Of course, he would only be tempted to use it if it meant an easy victory, but after a series of unlikely wins from Hoth's Army of Light, that fate started to look more and more possible. Khan sends Githany to try to fetch or kill Bane, this time knowing that she's the only one that he may let his guard down for, given their romantic history, and Bane is seduced into a kiss that's poisonous. Githany leaves, assuming the job is done, but Bane limps off to find help, eventually stumbling upon a healer, Caleb, that can heal anyone, though the issue is the healer won't budge, as he chooses not to work with Jedi or Sith. Bane finds the healer's daughter and threatens her life, and the healer, true to his word, saves Bane, who spares the people, feeling they may prove useful again in the future. Bane returns to Ruusan, and the tired and near-defeated Sith takes him in, realizing his power. Eventually, Khan thinks he has Bane at his mercy, thinking he was able to corrupt his mind, but it was a ploy, and a desperate Khan uses the Thought Bomb, killing himself, Githany, and all the Sith, along with 100 Jedi, including General Hoth, who led the assault knowing that if they set off the Thought Bomb, it would likely be suicide, though if they came in too few of numbers, the Sith may call off using the spell, which would then spare them. Bane officially takes the mantle of Darth Bane, with the mantle of Darth being outlawed by the Brotherhood, another sign in Bane's eyes of their unwillingness to truly seek power. His last order of business was to find a new apprentice, and as he leaves Ruusan, he meets just the right apprentice, a young, angry child named Rain, who just killed 2 Jedi after they accidentally killed her sister, and she joins Bane and the pair head off together. That was probably the longest plot summary I've done. I tried to make it not too long and convoluted, but these novels are really big and a lot of shit happens in them. Darth Bane is the lead of this book, with the book watching his ascension from essentially a peasant in borderline slavery on a planet all but forgotten by the Jedi and Republic to a fierce Sith Lord, to finally originally the last Sith Lord in the galaxy, looking to rebuild the Sith Order in a way he envisioned it, setting up the way that the Sith would operate in the core films rather than as the armies we saw in the Old Republic days. Bane at first joins the Sith out of opportunity. He was always Force sensitive, accidentally killing his dad with his power during an argument, but he'd go on to join the Sith army and hone those powers, eventually growing disenfranchised with Lord Khan's Brotherhood, reasoning they couldn't defeat the Jedi in a pseudo-democratic Sith system, and that they were more or less just Jedi drawing off the dark and thus false Sith, taking lessons from the long-deceased Darth Revan and his hologram. After he secures the power, his biggest obstacle is Githany, who is a former Jedi that left the Order in a quest for more power. Her and Bane have some romantic chemistry, though neither know if it's to take advantage of the other and their power, or for the sake of love, which both know would be a hindrance to their Sith ways. They need each other as allies, but true to the ancient Sith, look for ways to cause the other's undoing as a way to further their own personal agendas. By the end of the novel, Githany hedges her bets on staying with Khan and his Brotherhood over whatever Bane was cooking up, and doesn't realize until it's too late that the latter Sith was going to be the undoing of the former Sith Order with the thought bomb which takes her life ultimately. Lord Khan was the current head of the Sith, though he claimed the whole thing to be something of a democracy with each Sith equal, a philosophy that would cause less infighting in theory, but Bane reasons without the infighting the Sith wouldn't see challenge and wouldn't grow stronger. The rule of two he develops sees one Sith master with ultimate power and an apprentice that must choose a time to try to take that title and find a new apprentice, in theory making each Sith learn all the masters learned previously, plus their unique skills, making each generation of Sith stronger. Though laziness and a lack of luck caused this philosophy to start dimming a bit by the age of Sidious and Plagueis 950 odd years later. Either way, Khan's Brotherhood clearly wasn't working, and Khan was so obsessed with defeating the Jedi that he would use a dangerous trap like the thought bomb, which Bane figured correctly would surely kill the Sith. While Bane too despised the Jedi, he reasoned that it was unlikely their demise would happen for generations under the rule of two, which he was correct about mostly with the Jedi purge we see during the Clone Wars. Though he also knew Khan's Brotherhood as it stood would either be at an endless war with the Jedi or fall to the Jedi, as the Jedi's power were admittedly more suited to the democratic system than Khan's Brotherhood of Sith. General Hoth was the leader of the Army of Light, an army of Jedi that sought to destroy the Sith menace until the battle came to a climatic head on Ruusan, leading to his death along with 99 other Jedi during the explosion of the thought bomb. Hoth and many of his men were seen as noblemen, though over time the bloody and seemingly endless war against the Sith started driving him a bit mad and closer to the dark side, thus graying the line between him and Khan. It wasn't until just before the thought bomb was detonated that him and his followers started to act like Jedi again, with both his army and Khan's acting basically as mirrors of each other. One too close to the dark and the other too close to the light, both lost in watered-down philosophies. Farfalla was a Jedi that Hoth thought was too political and vain for the Army of Light, despite him being a very good and loyal soldier. Upon Hoth's death, Farfalla became the most important Jedi, working on the rescue effort and becoming a high-ranking master in the Jedi Order. We'll get further into his character in the Rule of Two novel because he's very essential to that one, but I thought I'd kind of lay the seeds of him here. Lucia is another name to keep in mind, though only a minor character in this novel. She was a friend of Bane's, then Dessel, during his time in the Gloomwalkers, a Sith infiltrate unit. She was a sniper, and Dessel once saved her life during the battle that would ultimately lead to his mutiny and rise to Sith Lord. Caleb is the healer that saved Darth Bane. Bane spared him, despite his tendency to neutrality, since he saved Bane, and Bane didn't believe in killing assets that one day may come in handy. He will also be important in all three novels, so keep him in the back of your mind as well as this series drops. Tonally, Path of Destruction gets very dark. Slavery, murder, and betrayal are major themes, and much of the hope that is seen in Star Wars is not here. I didn't mind though. It at points got a bit vile, and a lot to listen to, since the audiobook and the novel itself are both very, very long. That said, I know I said in my Acolyte review, the recent canon Star Wars show, that Star Wars needs hope to succeed, and I may have changed my view on this subject. It either needs hope or needs to be really, really good and lead to something larger in the narrative and world of Star Wars. The story of Darth Bane is essential to Star Wars' mythos, or at least the novel makes it essential, and you can't help but rooting for the Sith much of the time, as the Sith army seems to be diluted. And Bane as a character is so tragic, though unlike some Star Wars character, he embraces the darkness, and you also get a better idea of the corrupting ways that may have eventually led to someone like Anakin Skywalker becoming Darth Vader down the line. The pros were also very good. Drew Karpson crafts a new world based on a largely untouched era of the galaxy far, far away, and you kind of understand why centuries of wars surrounding the same stuff they were fighting about during the war at the dawn of the Old Republic caused the factions of these wars to kind of start to collapse, as we see in this novel, and Bane is such a lovable villain. Much like Thrawn, I think he's a character better suited to a novel than the screen. Bane is such an internally interesting character where I fear that on the screen he may come off a bit like a generic Darth Vader clone, and not really in a good way. Bane is intelligent, cunning, and strong, but you wouldn't know this on the screen. This only really works when exploring the galaxy through his eyes in prose form. If I had a complaint about this novel, it's the idea of the thought bomb, which just feels way too contrived. It's kind of this novel's Holdo maneuver that everyone hated from The Last Jedi. Like, I understand that only a large number of Sith can do it and it's basically suicide, but I don't know. Just seems like a real easy solution to literally kill every Sith but Bane. I will say it sets up the Jedi in an interesting path in the sequel novel, but sadly the sequels don't see Bane needing to really confront survivors or rogue Sith. It's fine, it works well enough, and I have no idea what they would do otherwise, but I just wish they did something a little more clever, I guess. That said, any large-scale purge of ultra-powerful Force users will feel a bit contrived. I mean, Order 66 was moderately clever, but like, really? Even the whole Jedi Council got bumped in a matter of like a day? I don't know. It's tricky, I guess, to go from hundreds of Sith to none, and the aftermath of the thought bomb may be 100 times more interesting than the plot device itself, which we will of course get to more next time. Anyway, in conclusion, Path of Destruction is very good. I like Bane quite a bit, and by the end of the novel, he definitely edged his way into one of my favorite villains in the Star Wars universe, a feeling that only grows as I read the sequels. And while the idea of the thought bomb is a little contrived and quick, I get what they wanted to do and why it needed to happen, and it echoes in the following entries of the trilogy. This is really a pathway between the Old Republic era and the modern Star Wars era, so it was kind of essential that this huge army of Sith got wiped out to the status quo that we would later see. It's a really good novel, and I think it adds a lot to the overall lore of the Sith, as well as just being good connective tissue between the stories of the Old Republic and the years of the Republic, and then of course later the Galactic Civil War.